Hey, this week on the Educational Triage podcast, we take on what may be going on with the growing rates of absenteeism. Are they really as bad as you think? They might be worse. Stay tuned. This is the Educational Triage podcast. Welcome. We invite you to come along with us on an exploration of interviews, issues, and other exciting and relevant topics in education, especially alternative education. They say alternative education is a laboratory for mainstream education. Why? Well, join us every week and listen in as Philip Summers
Aloha.
and I, Tony Hunt, jump in feet first to discuss issues that may affect our classes, students, communities, as well as our teaching. Please subscribe if you enjoy and find relevance in what you experience here. And if you haven't left a quick review, please do. We appreciate your candor and insights so we can improve as we move forward. Now, let's see what's on board today. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Educational Triage podcast. This is Tony, and of course, I have the lovely, voluptuous, ergonomic Philip Summers with me.
Ergonomic. I love it. Aloha. How are you, Tony?
Aloha. I'm sure that put some kind of chill in some people's spine, and for others, they probably are wondering.
So, I wonder how comfortable he might be. No, I'm sorry.
Absenteeism.
Yeah, it seems to be going up.
Holy cow. Holy cow. They talked up,
Yeah.
I went in and I did some research earlier today, and because we talked just the other day, and I did some more, and I was wondering whether or not the pandemic played any part in the learning. Well, we know the learning loss from the pandemic was caused greatly by the non-attendance and also by the unstructured learning, et cetera, that happened during that time. And students, I'm going to put in air quotes, inability to connect. So
I would say that's true.
I would say that there is truth to that, but then I also think that there are excuses that are made to that, where it's not necessarily that true. I know that in the district that I worked in, we had students who said that they weren't able to connect even though they were given all kinds of access. So, but, technology is growing and it does glitch. So I'm not going to fault that. But there has to be, I know that people did not try very hard to take care of those issues and they just let them go.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Well, it's not working. I'm not going to worry about it.
And I have the example to that is the revelation that it's not that internet service isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity in today's day and age. It's infrastructure. And so it became somewhat of an issue and it was spoken about. But have you noticed how it's disappeared? It's not like, we really got to get everybody internet. You hear about little small towns here's and there's getting it, little by little, but it's not like America must have internet. So,
well, you run into an issue there because the government cannot have a monopoly.
Yeah,
and take over a business, because internet runs on a business model. So that's a completely other topic in a completely different realm.
Yeah, except for the fact that it's considered infrastructure. It's just now in the hands of private industry. That's one of the problems. It might be there, but the whole thing's not being addressed. It's very important that everyone have internet if you're doing so much on internet. And, we're still not in any great hurry to get that done, just as the people who, I guess, weren't getting great internet are and getting it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the things I say or one of the reasons I think that is that rural communities and spread out school districts
Hmm.
suffered the most in absenteeism. They were always a little bit on the higher side, but then it just exploded during the pandemic and it stayed high, in the yonder counties, Oregon and such.
Hmm. Well, we saw that.
And that's
We
always
saw
been a
people
thing.
dropping out
Yeah.
of college. We saw a lot of people dropping out of
Yeah.
college, even, but that was purely
Yeah.
economic.
Yeah. That too,
And
too.
it had to do more with they were needed closer to home to help the family with the bills and taking care of everything and not
That's true.
be off frittering their time and their money away. That's the first thought that I'm thinking, that in the rural
Hmm.
counties of our states, are those students, are they working on the farm, on the ranch? What are they doing? I mean, are they actually
Hmm.
working? Is there
Yeah.
more vitality to their life and more meaning and relevance to their life found in doing that work rather than attending school?
Yeah. It does beg the question, what are they doing besides going to school?
I do know that there were students who they would go to their home, and this is
Hmm.
in the urban centers. There were two brothers, and they were not going to school. They couldn't figure out where they were. The mother had thought that they were going to school. They told her that they were, and they were caught playing video games. And that's all they did all day was play video games. They weren't
Oh,
going to
so they just,
school. And the mother just got tired of hearing from the school and blocked the school from calling. The staff went
no.
out to try to re-engage the students. And the kids thought, why would we go back to school? We're having the best time ever. There's no need for us to go back.
Yeah.
So you got to, what do you do with somebody like that? I mean,
Well, yeah. How common is that? But yeah,
well, I don't know.
there are some kids that are terminally wanting to stay young or just shirk whatever kind of future there is. That's the thing. And we all know the consequence of not at least graduating high school is
Mhm.
economically put you back big time. You're not going to like become an influencer and turn it all around by the time you're 24. That's for sure.
No, it's
So,
true.
yeah.
It's true. But the the lack of attendance has actually impacted, because we just did an episode on falling math and reading scores, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something that really heavily impacts that, because they're saying that it was 20% of the test score declines in math and 45% of the test scores that they know from the Council of Economic Advisors is due to absenteeism. And that has a huge impact on our economy for the
Does.
future. Because if you don't have people who are ready and willing to have the skills to move forward, what do you have? And if you accept, what happens if, I'm going to throw this to you.
Yeah.
Let's say that, because we were talking about how one major school district, they went from 18% to 36% in the last year.
Hmm.
And another school district that you and I know very well went from 20% to almost 40%. So they're doubling.
Yeah. It's
The absentee
doubling.
rates are doubling. So are we going to accept that and say, we know that you're not graduating high school, so we're going to do what so that you can enter the workforce? What are we going to do? What does that mean? What happens?
Yeah.
Because that is one of the big questions, right?
Yeah. It's always been traditionally thought that when you're 18, ta-da, you're an adult
Mm-hmm.
and you should start fending for yourself in some way. However, if you look at it economically, that's darn near impossible. You can't go out as an 18-year-old, certainly get a job and live on your own, pay your bills
I have
typically without, just off a high school diploma. So,
I have a lot of students who did. I have one who graduated 2 years ago who just bought his first house.
well, that's anecdotal. I mean, I'm
It's
saying, typically speaking, no one buys their first house. In fact, no one's buying a house anymore. In their 30s, they're unable to buy homes. So
well,
there you go. There's that. So that's a different matter. But yeah,
and this kid came from nothing. He
well,
came from
yeah, great.
absolute nothing.
It sounds like an Abe Lincoln story, and I'm really proud of him, but it's not typical. It's just not the bootstrap story, but it's nice.
It
He's
is.
a businessman, and I have a lot of respect for kids that go into business. Anybody goes into business, but
No, he
businesses
didn't go
fail
into
quick.
business. He didn't go into
Oh,
business. He went into the military.
oh, well, that might work, except never mind. That's a different circumstance.
He did. He went into the military. He was able to buy his first house. He just got married last weekend. I was the officiant. And
Well, that's
they,
that's not. Yeah, that might be. Although that's a different avenue altogether, and
well,
that's becoming the avenue, the military, like as for
but he
career.
was able to do it. So you're saying that there isn't a way. That
Mm,
is one way.
no, I'm saying I said with a high school diploma.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
true because
say
you have
and
to have the
going
high
into
school
the
diploma.
military. Yeah, I said with a
Yeah.
high school diploma. Yeah, you're not going to make much. Yeah. I mean, I tried it 30, 40 years ago. It was tough. I couldn't do it. Yeah. It's hard. But yeah, there's just yikes. It's difficult. They were advocating for a fifth year in high school too, in some places, thinking maybe, kind of get some college credits mixed in there with them before people go to junior college. But I'm thinking, I don't know.
What if a kid doesn't want to go to college? What if they just want to go to trade school?
Well, they still take the fifth year, I guess, and then they find the trade school,
Well,
hopefully. I mean,
with the
they have something to put in place. Yeah.
they're trying to get the heck out of Dodge already, and now you're telling them that they have to go another year. That's not going to win them over. Why would they want to
No, no,
continue
probably
going to
wouldn't.
school when they hate school?
Well, I don't know how to get anybody back into school if they hate school, but I do know that if you accommodate things like missed credits, sometimes it takes time. Yeah. We had a lot of kids though that had come to high school as juniors and had maybe 3 or 4 credits. They just blew off their sophomore and freshman year. I don't know where those kids went back in quote the day, but there were definitely kids who came into the program that I taught as juniors, about 6 credits,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 4 or 5. It was nuts. And it was like, where do you go for 2 years? How do you blow off school for 2 years? But yeah,
Well,
it was tough.
I think there are students who don't understand or realize
Yeah.
the need for the education. And then there are other students who, by circumstances of life,
Yeah.
I mean, it's between a rock and a hard place for them, whether or not they're going to be
That's
there or
true.
not. So, how do we get what's the easiest way? I had one student who was moving and she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, where are you moving to? She told me. I said, she was moving out of the country. She was moving down to Mexico. I said, will you
Wow.
have internet? Her mother said, yes. I said, okay, fine. I said, when you get there, I've given you, I said, open up the laptop. She opened it up. I gave her a Chromebook. I put in my information. I said, okay, so you've just emailed me. So all you have to do is go down there, email me, tell me you're there, and then you and I can communicate via email. We'll do what we can. And she said,
Yeah.
perfect. Disappeared off the face of the earth.
See,
And then we find
that would
out that she
happen.
moved to Arkansas and not Mexico.
Well, that's much different. I
But
don't care if you moved to China. I can still email you.
I mean, sometimes you just don't know. And I've had other kids who ended
Right.
up in detention.
Yeah.
They've been locked up for different reasons. You
Well,
just
that
don't
happens. Yeah.
know what their circumstances are. But if they're in detention, then they're under their remand. They have to be taking classes and they need to be studying.
They do,
So
actually. Yeah.
that's one of the benefits of kids being remanded. My question still in all of this is where are the parents? What are the parents doing?
Well, that's true. You had said that parents had turned off the phone
They do that
to
quite
get those
often
calls.
because they don't want to
Yeah.
hear it. They don't want to hear anything more
Yeah.
from the schools.
They do. And there's lots of, some of the research is saying that they underestimate, both parents and teachers underestimate the amount of absences that they have. They kind of, it's sort of like when you look up a hill, it kind of looks like closer, and then you look down from the same place, it looks further. It's
Mhm.
sort of a visual thing. It's the same thing with that. Oh, I don't miss that much school. It's like, what are you talking about? You miss like a quarter of everything. It's like, what? Yeah, and the parents get into that too.
I've had parents
So,
excuse. I had one girl miss a week and a half, and I gave her the work that she missed when she came
yeah,
back. And her mother called me absolutely enraged. And I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "My daughter
hmm,
was at a Cosmo shoot. My daughter is a model."
okay,
And I
so
said, "Okay." And she said, "How dare you decide that she's going to make up all this work?" I said, "She missed the work. It's part of her grade. She needs to get through this work so that we can
yeah,
move on because it kind of scaffolds up."
mhm,
And she said, "Well, she's not going to do it." And I thought, well, that's your choice and her choice. I would hope that she would make the better choice than you.
yeah,
And I had another parent who wouldn't bring the kid to school until 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
And
I've seen
we
that too.
had, and finally I told her, I said, look, if your kid's not coming until then, she can't be in the program because the program dictates that, and you signed a contract and she signed a contract that said that she would be here at
Yeah.
X time. And she said, "You don't understand, da 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 da." And I said, "No, I get what you're going through, but you're using all your resources on one of your kids who's already graduated and telling your other kid that it's not important that she graduate because you have to spend everything on this other kid.
Mhm.
So we got to figure that out." And then I had the AP telling me that I need to accept all these absences. And I thought, holy cow, what's going on here? This is just a world of crazy.
Yeah, what is going on there? I,
So, and
that's why I was thinking about the whole, we soften grades, and
mhm,
so now we're softening attendance. Like, okay, you're not really here, the required 90% of the time, but we'll say you are.
no, no, we had to let them go. But the
Yeah.
AP said I threw that kid out. I did not throw the kid out.
Oh no, you
We had
didn't. No.
constant conversations. The kid chose and the mother chose to not participate in the program. And I said, okay, we need you to leave so another kid who can be here can take your place.
Well, that's true too. We have
So,
that
because
luxury, actually.
we're not just going to have somebody who does nothing and the kid wasn't doing any work because the kid was exhausted because they had to be at the hospital all night. So,
Yeah, that too.
and I'm not going to go into the reasons why they were at the hospital. I'll just say that there was a huge manipulation that was going on in the family.
Yeah,
So,
that there's also kids that are in charge of the kids because the parents are working, kind of thing, and so they're needed at
mhm.
home. And we had that conflict. Go, well, but I really need so and so at home, and it's like, doesn't kind of work that way, but it does for them. And so that's an interesting one.
I had some students that were plagued with learning disabilities who worked so hard because they could not be at home anymore. They needed to get out. And the only way for them to get out was to graduate.
Oh, that's yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So, but getting back to this, what are the reasons? Did you find anything on what are the causes for all the absenteeism, or is it just a general disregard for not finding school relevant? What is it? Do you know?
Yeah, I didn't, there's not a lot of reasons. I mean, there's not a lot of causes per se or relevant factors. Well, there are relevant factors per se. Like rural districts always had a little bit of a high attendance absentee rate, and that shot way high up in the pandemic. The data says that although they don't know what's causing it, in some districts it's trending downward. So, for example, in X school district, it was at before the pandemic in 2019, it was a 15% attendance, and then it shot up to 36, say, and now it's down to 33. But some districts are actually going higher.
Yeah.
They're actually trending upwards.
Well,
That's really weird. Yeah.
I want to do a shout out to Kalamazoo and others of their like. I'm going to put the article down below.
Uh-huh.
But they saw a double digit drop in chronic absenteeism
Oh,
because the administration went out and started knocking on doors.
really?
Really.
That
Here's the
I would
thing.
just thought of that. Yeah, that's go ahead.
It's a
That's
lot of
crazy.
districts say, well, if the kids aren't coming, then you need to go out there and you need to start knocking on their doors and you need to find out why. No, 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 no. That's not part of my contract. Not only is it not part of my contract, I don't have the wherewithal to be working a full day. And now you want to add to my day and have me go out doing all of this extra. And I doubt very
Yeah.
seriously that you're going to pay me anything for it as well. But I've got a life outside, work life balance, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, no.
Now, there were studies that were done that actually showed, and students do connect with teachers. So if a teacher does have that connection, it makes sense for the teacher to be in contact with those students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It does.
But
Yeah.
there are studies, and I'll put one or two of them down in the show notes, that demonstrate that strong leaders in the building who connect with students and families have a great deal of meaning, and it has a great deal of purport in bringing those students back.
I imagine it does.
It's absolutely vital. So they talk about, I'm trying to think of, I think Coach Gloria talked about the wussification of administration and how they just want to throw everything out onto teachers, and they're not going to back teachers up or do any of that. And so when you have a demoralized staff, when you have people who they don't even know what the consequences are for anything anymore anyway. So if you tell teachers, don't mark them absent if they're a half hour or an hour late, let them do that. And then all of a sudden you throw the gauntlet down and you say, okay, we have a zero tolerance on tardies.
Mhm.
And then you realize that that's not working. So you go back to giving them grace for another half hour to an hour and not marking down tardies. If they're there, they're there. I mean, there's this wishy-washy kind of thing where there are no expectations. So if you don't have concrete expectations,
Right. Yeah.
why
Well,
would I
clearly.
go there?
Why would I go to that place?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
obviously don't care enough about me, that you're not trying to make sure that I am there. And
Right.
There's also, you know, if you miss 3 days in a row, that could put you a month behind in your learning. So by that time, the students are overwhelmed and they have no idea what's going on in school anymore. Why would you go? You're too far behind.
Well, you're talking about all this, and excuse me, I've been thinking about it all. And why are we like making kids fit the mold of the Carnegie hours? I mean, the school is so set up, and we all know how it's set up and the defects, but that schedule, you sit in this class for 50 minutes, 5 days a week. And whether or not you need to be, you're going to be there for 15 minutes, 5 days a week. And after a while, you sort of just kind of lose, I don't know, the wherewithal to do it anymore. It's like it sort of defeats you. Like, why am I doing this? I'm here for the sake of being here instead of learning. And I always found that to be really difficult because when I taught in a program that had less hours to it, they were really packed. We were there from 8:40 to 2:20. So I think we were shy like one Carnegie hour or something a day. It was, but the schedule fit, everything was going well, and we made it work real well. And then we had somebody come in from the district who was straight to the book and said, "Oh, we have to change that. You have to extend your school day." And so it just became kind of like formulaic after that. It was like, all right, yeah, instead of going to the next thing and keeping the pace lively, we had to sort of add 10 minutes to these periods and 15 to those. And it slowed everything down, quite frankly. It made things tiring instead of invigorating.
Because they tie the funding to the students and how much time they spend in the school,
I know.
which is another cause for alarm because this means with all these students not showing up, funding will be cut.
That's true too. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
So if we're at 40%, if only 60% of the students are showing up, what are you going to be doing if you're losing 40% of your funding?
Well, I mean, I don't know, have a bake sale.
you
Sell
can't
Christmas
you can't
wreaths.
serve things that are baked outside of the school kitchen.
I just threw the Christmas wreath ideas out the window then too. What? I could just see some neighbors going, Christmas wreath.
They sell them. Some people have their
Oh,
fundraisers.
I did. I did. As a Boy Scout, we sold Christmas wreaths. I thought that's holiday decorations, including
Yeah.
Christmas wreaths. Yeah, but yeah, and that's the whole problem too about schools is they're underfunded and the foundations are like ways for wealthier districts to get stuff. That's just infamous, and poorer districts, the citizens don't have that money to chip in, so they're not making up that funding. You're right. I
Well,
hadn't thought about that.
maybe if they cut the funding for the bureaucracy at the state level and trickled it down by 60%, and there was more money going to the schools, because we know that the bureaucracy makes, as they typically make more money than the average teacher does.
Yeah, actually they do.
And
But yeah,
there are
the
more of them, and there's a lot of redundancy that happens there. So,
yeah.
but here's the problem. And I hear what you're saying about not using the Carnegie hours, because I don't remember how long ago we were talking, and I mentioned my idea of a school would be students could come in, and let's say they wanted to work with you. I want to work with Mr. Summers today because I like Mr. Summers and he makes me feel all nice and cozy,
He's teaching history and I need my history credits.
and
So
I need my history
yeah.
credits because
Yeah.
I don't like talking to Mr. Tony because Mr. Tony is kind of cranky and
He
he's
always
kind of
yells at me.
mean, and I don't like reading. Well, once they finish with Mr. Summers, they have to go meet with Mr. Tony because they have
Yeah,
to
they
get all of
eventually do.
that done. And
Yeah,
so
eventually.
they they are in charge of where they go to get what, but they can't do anything until they have all their credits in a sense aligned. But if they're able to get them done 1, 2, 3, then they're done with that and they move on to the next level.
That is exactly how it was working in that one program. I was with the lack of Carnegie hour. They would come in for the core classes in the morning and they would just study it. And a lot of them, if they like exactly what you said, if they like doing the English, they'd hang out with me. But eventually they had to go talk to Mr. So and so who did computer stuff. And it was hard. And they're going, yeah, but it's really hard. And I said, yeah, but you got to take it to graduate. So eventually they wouldn't be in my class anymore. They'd be doing that. And of course, because I taught English, they were there a lot because it was 4 years of English, but that's how it worked there.
Mm-hmm.
And they got it all done. I mean, all the assignments, quarter by quarter, semester by semester, they
But
were
the other
doing
thing
it.
that they've done is they've gone to the computer based program for credit recovery. And
Yeah,
rather than having it so that the teacher can, and I'm not going to espouse my ability to create outstanding, brilliant programs, even though I do, they can be, I'm kidding. What I created was tailored so that students had options inside of them and they could go for
yeah,
what they wanted to look at and they would learn, and they would
right,
learn the larger concepts, but they could focus in on smaller concepts that would actually be more towards their interests or maybe their culture or something that would stimulate their thinking and their brain.
right.
And there was a lot of reading and writing across the curriculum and maybe some calculus. And I don't mean calculus class, I just mean math
No, yeah,
and logistics. And they took that away where the teacher could actually be a mentor on the program to where all their learning comes from this AI on the screen and
yeah,
somebody who does a scripted thing, and they're everything is either AI or else it's multiple choice. So they're not getting personal feedback really. It's
no.
very difficult to work with students on that program, and it's lost all personality, and they
Yep,
just
it
feel
has.
like a number and there's no interest for them. There's no attachment to it.
Mm-mm.
Where if you have
No,
something that teachers are working with and they can work with you and they can talk to you about it
right,
and they can maybe manipulate things a little bit for you, that's missing. And so the more we go into this canned program stuff, especially at the secondary level, at middle school and secondary, kids want to be talked to and they want to learn because they need to figure out how to navigate society. That's one of their big things. And if you are reading off a script to them and they have to sit there and be compliant and quiet, that's not what learning is.
no. You were talking, and I thought to myself, the way I used to structure my English was I gave a lot of choices, and there were some novels that they had to read, and they were different sorts of sets or genres, but I gave them a choice within that, and I was familiar with all the books, and it was a pretty wide range of books, and they could choose which one, and we would talk about it firsthand, and I would describe what each book's like. And so
Mhm.
they would sort of, gravitate toward what they liked. And that was really great because they taught me a lot. Some of the kids really took off on some of those books and they said, here's my take on it. And they did a paper on it. And I'm going, wow, I never thought about that, but that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. I had not caught that. Now, granted, I didn't study these books as in depth as some of these kids had, and some of them I'd read a long while ago. But yeah, it was fascinating. They were great, and they wanted to do it because they chose the book, they chose the content, And then we covered the stuff that needed to be covered. How do you tell another human being, about this book and what the story is and how the metaphors work and things like that? That's just basic skill. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Here's what I think might be the leading cause of absenteeism: student agency.
and lack of interest.
No, student agency. They are
Oh,
free.
yeah.
They have agency over what they're doing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
There may be consequences to what they're doing, but it's their choice for many, and they're making the choice not to
Oh,
go.
well, that disturbs me because you're saying that teachers have to compete with the things that are in life in their lives these days now. And I'm saying you're
We have
right
a
too.
very different
It's
world.
disturbing. It's disturbing, yeah. Because I mean, these lessons, some of them are just damn boring. This kid's going, I could be doing this 6 different ways, or I could be doing 6 different other things. So we have to compete with that. Yeah,
You always have had to compete with it. It's just never been brought to the forefront like this before.
you've been right.
Where,
Yeah,
I mean, think about how much freedom kids actually have today.
yeah.
Think about how coddled kids are today. And you think about they have their phones, they're out doing TikToks, they're having a blast doing whatever. Now, sometimes what's going on in a kid's life is absolute hell.
Mm-hmm.
I had the one
Oh, yeah.
student who he hadn't been there for a couple of days, and I said, "Has anybody talked to him or seen him?" And everybody said, "They're being evicted." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they told me, they said, "Well, his mom went on a vacation and told him as she walked out the door, 'We're being evicted on Tuesday, so make sure all your stuff is packed up.'" Mom didn't pack anything up. I showed up at the house. There's literal garbage everywhere in the front of the house. I knock on the door and all I see are empty food containers all over. There's flies. The place just stank.
Mm.
The kid answers the door with a blanket wrapped around him. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, we're being evicted." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Where are you going?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Okay." I said, let me go get you some breakfast and let's talk. So we did, and he and I talked. He had no place where he was going to go. He didn't know what he was going to do. So I spent my day working with him, trying to find a placement for him. And did I get him to school? Yes, I did. But did he manipulate me? Oh, yeah, he really did manipulate that situation. I mean, he was using it as an excuse not to come to school. He had a place to go. He knew it did. He just didn't want to follow the rules because he could have moved in with his dad. But dad was pretty strict and said, "You're going to do X, Y, and Z. You're not going to go out at night. You're going to be at home. You're going to take care of things." And he didn't like that. And mom didn't care, obviously, because mom left town just before they were being evicted and disappeared.
Mm.
So you have a lot of extremes like that where, and I've had other kids whose parents were drug users who would disappear and they would leave the kid and none of the bills have been paid. There's no food in the house. The kid had no resources. What's a kid going to do? You would think that they would go to school because one, there's showers, two, there's free food and social network, and they could probably get resources. But a lot of people don't see schools as being helpful. They see them as being intrusive.
Yeah, they don't feel like they're a part of them. That's for
No,
sure.
no.
Yeah.
So you have
Well,
to look
yeah.
at the fabric of each one of those schools and who's being clothed in it, in a sense.
Yeah.
And are you really inclusive, or are you like looking at some of the kids and saying, somebody else is dealing with them, I'm not going to? That's not being inclusive. You got to make sure that even the least of those kids is being taken care of. even the ones that you don't like very much.
Well, yeah, kid's kid. But
Yeah,
yeah, even the ones I don't like too much. Yeah.
because
I sort of drop the dislike as soon as, a kid needs something. If they genuinely need something, it's like, okay, you're a kid. Yeah. If you're being a jackwagon, you're just a jackwagon. And I never hold it against you.
there was a kid, there was a kid who was having a really tough time.
Mhm.
And I went up to him and I was going to talk to him, and he just, oh, he was angry and he just walked past me. And I guess the fact that I was trying to calm him down made him even angrier. So I backed off.
Mm.
But then he charged his car at me,
Yikes.
tried to run me over, tried to run down a couple of other people. And then he just disappeared. His sister had real anger problems. And I knew a cop who worked with the family. We found out because we knew each other socially. And he was talking about the parents and he talked about the kid. And I said, "Oh, do you know what happened with the sister who had anger problems too?" And he said, "He had a
Mm.
sister?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, there's a whole family of them." And he said, "Oh, Lord." But anyway, so this kid ended up in prison. I kept getting phone
Ooh.
calls about him because people at the juvenile detention center at the Capitol knew that I knew him and I knew them. And so they'd give me updates. But then he was released. And the next thing I know, I'm watching the news and he's been arrested on this horrific murder.
Oh, dear.
There were several murders that he was involved in. So sometimes sometimes you have a gut feeling about people, but still, I mean, you still need to reach out. Just make sure you're safe.
Or, no.
I mean, I don't
Incident.
mean to alarm anybody, but you do
Yeah.
have, you should be able to read the room when it comes to things. If there's a real anger problem, to stay back and just, you
Mhm.
know, don't poke the bear, but try to assuage it
Yeah.
somehow. But once again, the parents, the family, the community, what's going on, what resources are there for these kids, how do we get them back engaged, what are some things, are we working with boys and girls clubs, are we working with the community resources that are there that maybe the kids check into. I had a number
Mhm.
of kids, I had kids whose parents got very sick during the pandemic and so they had to work and they stayed there and they continue to work because now the parent who brought home the greatest amount of money could no longer do that
Yeah.
because they were disabled. You can't
There
tell
was
a kid, you can't support your family, you need to be here.
Can't tell the parents that.
You certainly
And
can't tell the parents that.
here's some facts. We were talking about how the pandemic had spiked everything in
Okay.
absenteeism and how some states had recovered and some hadn't. It's So of the 30 improvements in chronic absentee rates of 5 percentage points or fewer, there's 42 states that were doing that.
Say that again.
The 30 okay, 2023 absenteeism data, 30 states reported improvements in chronic absentee rates of 5 percentage points or fewer. So when the rates went way high, say for example, let's talk about Oregon. 2018-19, it was 20.4%.
Mm-hmm.
And in 21-22, 36.1%.
Okay.
And in 22-23, it's 38.1%. It shares the honor of going up with Louisiana, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. And that's it. 4 states have reported the absenteeism going up from 2021 to 21 to 22 and 22 to 23. And
Holy
Oregon's one
cow.
of them. Yeah, Oregon. I don't know. And I don't know what the data says as far as like the population, but these are pretty diverse. Louisiana, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, and then Oregon. So yeah, I don't know
Wow.
what the common denominator might be on those.
I
It's
don't know.
interesting. California did pretty good. They were
Did
at
they?
12%, then they went to 30, and now they're 24.9.
So
So
they've made a dent.
yeah, they made a dent. Alabama was at 11.17%. It went to 17.86%, and now it's at 17.9. So it went up, but it was incalculable. It wasn't a big enough rate to join the
No,
four big ones. So
no.
yeah, crazy.
It's
Yeah.
still less than half. It's they have a better, much better rate than Oregon.
Well, Oklahoma, who's on that list there, they're at 14.03. They went to 19.5, and now they're at 20.04. So that list is Oklahoma. Oklahoma's clearly got lower numbers than Oregon when it comes to the original and the current absenteeism rate. So
Yeah.
we're number one. So, Oregon's number one. But yeah, I you know, and I don't know why, because I've I lived in that state for a long, long time, and I always thought that they'd done pretty decent with their school system. But then again, I learned different.
It's interesting. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
it is. I'm
I
kind of
wonder what
befuddled by.
I wonder what the disconnect is. What is the disconnect?
I don't know, and it's
Wow.
getting worse in the state of Oregon.
Well, yeah. So so and the problem is that if we are indeed heading towards a recession, but they've been saying that for a while now.
Yeah,
What's
talk of
what's
recession's
the
receded.
economic impact going to be on those families and on those students
Yeah,
who are non-attenders now, and what's going to happen with them? Where are they going to end up? So, because Oregon has not really addressed the homeless problem,
no,
and it's
no.
getting worse. So, what do we do? And
Yeah,
I
gosh,
hate that this is
wish I
on
knew.
such. It feels like it's such a bummer note to be ending on.
Yeah,
But I have good
it's a
news.
call.
I have
Yes,
good news.
good. Please.
Next week
Oh,
we have the incredible Dr. Lincoln Stoller coming on with his views of education, which I think most of you will find stimulating, a bit irreverent,
yes, a bit.
but
I like it. I loved
it
it.
is fascinating. He is a fascinating guy.
It
So,
really is. Yeah.
so be sure that you tune in for that. And Philip, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate
A pleasure. A pleasure.
And we will see you all next week. So keep your feet on the ground while you reach for the stars. Adios.
Aloha.